Hi, welcome back. In the last video, we set it up so our character's run animation plays when the character is moving, and then the standing animation plays when the character is standing still. What I want to do in this video is look at how we can add an attack to our character. We're going to do a projectile, which means that our character is going to shoot something. It might be an arrow, it might be a laser beam, it might throw a rock, whatever it is. Now, you may or may not be planning on having some kind of projectile in your game. Even if you're not necessarily planning on having this in your final product, we're going to all put it in now, and then we can disable it at the end, because I think it's a really important skill to know how to be able to do, and it can be a little complicated. So follow along with me, and then even if you're not planning on having your character be able to shoot anything, it'll be a useful thing that we can turn off at the end if you don't want to use it. Now, the first thing I'm going to do in Construct is I'm going to go to my event sheet, and I'm going to do some organization. What I want to do is make a group that I can put all of the movement stuff into to kind of get it out of the way for now. And the way that I do that is by clicking on the white space down at the bottom of my screen. And you'll see Add Group. So right click down here at the bottom, find Add Group. And it's going to ask you to name the group. I'm going to name mine Character Movement. You can name it something different, but this is going to be the folder that keeps all of our movement stuff for our character in it, so I think Character Movement makes sense. I'm going to click OK. And what I have to do now is take all of the movement stuff that I made in the last video, and I'm going to put it under this category. So what you can do is you can grab any of these blocks and drag them down and underneath this group. It's kind of specific in the way you have to click and drag it. Don't click where it says keyboard, but click over to the left of it. If you can see where my mouse is, it's kind of on the tab that hangs out on the left side. Click and drag it from there. I'm holding down my mouse button, and I want to drag it until the black bar pops up right underneath the character movement header. I'll let go, and there it is. Do the same thing for the next. Grab it from the left side, drag it down until that black bar pops up just like this, and let go. Do that for each one. Great. Now, if you click the little triangle, it closes it all down, so it keeps it out of the way. This is a necessary step. It's not only good for organization, but it's also going to be useful for some of the events that we have in this next section. So make a new group, put all your movement stuff in there. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to take the animation that we've made for our character's action, and we're going to put it into our main character sprite. So go to your layout and double click on your character. Now, if you remember from the last video, this brings up our window where we have all of our animations, right? We so far have a standing animation and a running animation. We're going to add a new animation in here. So right click in the white space on the right side menu, click Add Animation, and let's name this one whatever your action is. I'm going to call this one, my guy's going to shoot a bow and arrow. So I'm going to call it shooting. And I'm going to go to the folder icon that's on the top left. Click on Load Images from Files. And we're going to find the animation that we've made of our character's action. Now, whatever that action might be. So some of you guys might have, a punch or a sword or even a dodge or something. It doesn't necessarily matter. It doesn't even have to make sense in this case, but we're going to use whatever animation that we've created for our character's action. Now, if you haven't exported it yet, you'll need to export it. For mine, what I'm going to do is open up Hiskel. I'm going to open up the file that I've created for that animation. I'm going to click on Import, Browse Hiskel Files. I called mine Goblin Arrow, and I have this little animation of him pulling back a bow and arrow. I'm going to export this, and what I want to do is make sure that the scale is set to the same number that I used for my other animations, right? I've been using 512, scale 4.0x. Whatever you used for the standing and for the running animations, you want to keep that number consistent. Otherwise, your character might change sizes depending on what the animation is doing. Make sure GIF is selected and click Download. I recommend saving stuff in your documents. Click Save. Perfect. Now I can go back into construct and I can find that animation that I just exported. So in this case, it's called Goblin Arrow. I'm going to double click on it and I have my animation down here. Perfect. Now, if you click on this in the right side menu, there are some options here. You can change the speed. We don't want this one to loop, really. I think we just want to change the speed. The speed might be good, but you can always test it. If you right click and click on preview, it'll show you how fast the animation plays. I think mine could be a little bit faster. Not too much, but maybe I'll do like a 10. Yours might be good at speed 5. It's totally up to you. There he goes. He pulls the arrow back and then he releases it. Perfect. I'm going to close that. So now I have all 3 animations here: standing, running, shooting. Now let's go to our event sheet. We're going to add a new event. We have all of our character movement stuff kind of tucked away under the character movement group. And we're going to add a new event with the keyboard. We're going to go to key is down. And we're going to decide which key we want to use to make our character shoot a projectile. That's up to you. I'm going to use the space bar. I think space makes sense. You can do something different if you want, Z or X or enter or whatever you want to use. I'm going to hit the space bar for mine and click OK. And then click done. I'm going to add an action for this one. I want the action to happen to my main character, right? So when the space bar is down, I'm going to have my main character's animation change. So I'm going to do the set animation. If you remember from the last video, you want to start by typing in a quotation mark and you'll see all your animations here. I want to do shooting. So when the space is down, he'll be shooting his bow and arrow. Let's try it out. Press the play button. We can run around with the direction keys. I'm going to press the space button and he pulls out his bow and arrow. Perfect. Now he freezes in this weird pose, right? This is the last frame of the animation that I made. He just kind of gets stuck there. What we want to do is make sure that when the animation finishes, it goes back to the standing animation. So I'm going to add a new event. And this time I'm going to use the main character. Click on main character. And we want to use on finished. What on finished means is it's like when a certain animation finishes, then we can have something happen. So I'm going to click on finished. I'm going to start by typing in a quotation mark. And what I'm going to do is shooting. So when the shooting animation's finished, I can have an action happen. This action is going to be with our main character. And we're going to set the animation just back to a standing animation. So basically what this is telling us is that when the main character's shooting animation finishes, the animation goes back to the standing animation. Let's try it out. Shoots, goes back to normal. Perfect. Now nothing actually comes out, no arrow flies across the screen, right? It just kind of disappears. But at least we have the animation in there. Now, there are some weird things with this. If you try to press the action button, whatever, space bar in my case, and move at the same time, it might break. It might just kind of slide around. We'll take care of that in a minute. Let's not worry about that quite yet, though. What we're going to do now is we're going to make a little projectile sprite. We're going to make some kind of object that will shoot out of our character when this animation plays. And to do that, we're going to go back to our layout. We're going to right click anywhere in the open white space. And we're going to insert a new object. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to go to sprite. Now don't double click the sprite. If you already have, that's okay. But just click on it once. And we're going to name this, name it something. You can name it projectile. I'm going to name mine arrow because I'm going to have an arrow come out. This is going to be the sprite that represents the thing that shoots out of our character. Click insert. And click anywhere in your white space. And what we're going to do is we're going to put something here. Now, if you already have a sprite that you want to use for this, you can. I don't expect a lot of you guys to necessarily have that. So we're just going to use a placeholder for now. We're just going to use a red box. What I want to do is click over on the little paint bucket tool that's in the toolbar on the left side. You see that? And set the color up here in the kind of rainbow window up on the top left. And just make a red box. Just click to fill it red. And then close it. So you should see a big red box in your layout now. We can change the size of this. This is going to be a big projectile to shoot out, so I'd recommend shooting it down or shrinking it down. We can even make it into like a little laser beam looking thing, right? We're going to shoot a laser beam out. Good. Now let's go back to our event sheet. And what we're going to do, let's go back to our layout. We have one more thing we have to do here. For this object, for this little projectile, this laser beam that's going to shoot out of our character, what we can do is we can set a certain behavior to make it act like a bullet. If you look in the left side menu, you'll see a part that says behaviors. If you don't see that, make sure you have your red box clicked on. You'll see behaviors. What behaviors are, they're like certain things that you can, certain attributes that you can apply to an object that'll make it behave in a certain way. So if I click on add new behavior, there's all these different things on here, and we'll use these from time to time. There's one that says bullet, and bullet just means something that flies, right? Something that shoots across the screen. If you click on the bullet behavior, it gives you some options over here on this left side window: speed, acceleration, gravity. We're going to leave all this stuff alone. We can change the speed if we want. We can adjust that later. The rest of the stuff we can just kind of leave as is. We can close this window, and now this little laser beam has the bullet behavior. Great. Now let's go to the event sheet. What we're going to do is we're going to say that when our character's animation is playing, we're going to make it spawn one of these little projectiles. So I'm going to add a new event. And I'm going to go to my main character. And what I'm going to select for this one is playing. What is playing means is like what animation is playing for your character at that current second. And you double click on that. If we start typing in the quotation mark, we can see the different animations we have. I'm going to go to shooting. And I'm going to click done. So if the shooting animation is playing, I'm going to add an action. And with my main character, if you scroll down towards the bottom, you'll see where it says spawn another object. That means we're going to have our main character create this little projectile out of its body and shoot it across the screen. So click on spawn another object. Click to choose which object you want to use. Our only two sprites we have are our main character and the arrow, so we're going to use our little projectile arrow there. This layer and image point, don't worry about this stuff. We'll come back to that later. Click done. It's good. Now let's try it out. Press the play button. Hit the button. I'm using the space bar. And you'll see as the animation plays, a bunch of these red laser beams will come shooting out. Now a bunch of them come out, and you can just kind of hold it down, kind of break the game by making a bunch of them. It also, even if I'm facing to the left, it always moves to the right, right? So it's not perfect, but at least something's coming out. Great. Let's see if we can make that a little bit better. The first thing I would say is let's make it so only one of these arrows comes out while the animation's playing, rather than a continuous stream. The way that we can do that is we can add another condition. We can add another part to the right side. If you double click over on the left, not this part right here, but over on the kind of the left tab, double click over there, we can add more stuff to it. This time we're going to go to system. Now system has just a bunch of random stuff that's just kind of useful now and then. And if you scroll down in the system, you'll see one that says trigger once while true. What that means is only one instance of this is going to happen. Even the entire time that the animation is playing, instead of just like continually spawning these arrows, it'll just spawn once. Now let's try that out. Now when I press the space bar, only one comes out. Perfect. Now the next thing we're going to try to do is set it up so that when our character is facing to the left, then the little laser beam will shoot to the left as well, right? Rather than always moving to the right. So let's add a new event. For this one, we're going to go to main character. And what I'm going to have you guys select on this one is mirrored. And what this does is it checks to see if our main character is mirrored or not mirrored. Click on that. Now, if you remember, under character movement, we have it set so that when the A button is down, our character is mirrored. And when the D key is down, our character is not mirrored, right? So when it's mirrored, it's facing to the left. When it's not mirrored, it's facing to the right. So what I'm going to have is when our character is mirrored, aka facing to the left, I'm going to add an action so that my arrow moves to the left. Now, the way that we can set the direction of the arrow is if you scroll down, there's a whole category of bullet things, bullet conditions that we can have take effect. We want to do the one that says set angle of motion. Set angle of motion is which direction is it facing. Now, if you remember from the previous videos, 0 means to the right, 180 means to the left. So when our character is mirrored to the left, we want to have the arrow shoot to the left as well. Click done. Now this is going to kind of work, but not completely work, and I'll show you why. If I'm facing to the left, it shoots to the left. That's great. If I'm facing to the right, it shoots to the right. But what's weird is if I shoot one to the right, but then face to the left, it changes the direction of all of the arrows that are in the air. All of those little laser beams that are on screen, if I change, it changes their direction too. We want to change that. The way we can fix that is we're going to add another condition to this. And again, I double click over here on the left side tab, just that left side corner. And on this one, I'm going to go to my arrow and I'm going to say that this only happens just the second when the arrow is created. So scroll down to find on created. What that means is that the angle of the motion of my arrow only takes effect the second it's created. Ones that have already been created, that are already flying through the air, they won't be affected by this. Just ones that are created in that split second. So now I can shoot ones over there, I can shoot ones over here, and they won't change direction. Good. Now there's a couple other things I want to do here. In order to really make this look good, I have to line it up, right? I have to make it so that that red beam comes out of, where I want the arrow to emerge, so really right at the tip of like the bow and arrow. I also might want to make it so that the red beam comes out on, maybe a certain frame of my animation. The way that we do that is by going to the layout. If you go to the layout and double click on your character, let's go to our shooting animation. And if you look over on the left side toolbar, do you see that tool that looks like a little crosshair right here? These are image points. And when you click on that, this menu pops up over here. Where it says origin here, that I wouldn't mess with. The origin point is the point that kind of lines up your character's animations with each other. So that point is always in the same place. If you move that origin point around, your character is going to jump around in weird ways when the animation plays. If you've accidentally moved your origin point, it's not a big deal. It's a quick fix. You just have to right click on origin and click apply to all animations. That'll make it consistent. So if you've accidentally changed your origin point, don't worry, it's a quick fix. But what we're going to do is right click and hit add new image point. This new image point is going to be where our projectile shoots out from. There's a couple things we can do here. We can name it. I'm going to name mine arrow, so I know which image point this is. It's about my arrow. It's where the arrow is going to come from. The other thing I'd recommend doing is right-clicking and hit apply to all animations. So that way across all your animations, you'll have that arrow point to work with. So name it, right-click, apply to all animations. Now let's go to our animation. Now yours might be not a shooting animation. Maybe yours is like a sword attack or like a dodge or something like that. That's fine. We're just going to use that animation for now. Mine is shooting an arrow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find where I want the arrow to come out from. So for example, I want the arrow to really emerge just right from the tip of the bow, right? So I make sure that my arrow is selected and I just click and put the box, the image point, right where I want that to start. So it's like right here, and you have to do it for each frame. You can also just kind of apply it to all of them. So if you get it in the right place, you can right click and hit apply to all animations, and that'll make it stick with all of them. So you should have it in all the frames. It's going to be right where you want it to emerge from. Good. Now, if we play it now, it's not going to work. If I try shooting the arrow, it still just kind of comes from the middle of my character. There's one last thing we have to do for this, and that is in the event sheet, we have to go back to where we told the arrow to spawn. If you double click on this part of your event sheet, you'll see where there's an option to put in the image point. Now, we want to use the arrow image point that I just made, right? You can do this one of two ways. You can either put in quotation marks and type out the name of the image point that you made. So I named mine arrow, or you can just put in the number. This is image point number 1 that we just made, right? So you can just put in a number 1. Sometimes I think it's easier to keep track of the names, but if you like to use the numbers, you can do that too. Now let's try it. Pretty good, but it comes out too early, right? I don't want it to come out until like the frame when he releases the arrow, but it does come out in the right spot. So what I want to do now is one last thing for the animation. I'm going to make it so that the arrow doesn't spawn until a particular frame in my animation. If I double click on my sprite, I can see that there's like frame 0 is when he's just standing there. Frame 1 is when he starts to grab the arrow. Frame 2, he's pulling it back. Frame 3 is pulling it back even more. Frame 4, he pulls it back just a little bit more. And then frame 5 is when he releases, right? It's when the arrow should shoot out. So on frame 5 is when I want that red laser beam to actually spawn. And I can do that by adding one more condition to this section right here. I'm going to double click on the left tab there. I'm going to go to my main character, and you'll find compare frame. What that means is like what frame of animation is playing. So I'm going to do frame 5. Now yours might be totally different. It depends on what your animation looks like. You know, yours might be frame 0 or 1 or 2, whatever you want to have the frame of movement and when the spawn actually occurs. I'm going to click done. There's one last kind of small detail here. It won't work unless you put the trigger once at the bottom. For whatever reason, Construct doesn't like it when the system trigger once is in the middle. So you have to just kind of rearrange these and make the system here trigger once at the bottom. I'm going to press play. That looks pretty good, right? Now I can replace that red laser beam with an actual sprite of the arrow, and that'll probably look better. So I'll show you what that looks like. I can just go in there to this red laser beam, and I can replace it with an arrow sprite that I've already made. And take a look at that. Adjust the size of it a little bit. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, pretty good. I might need to work on the size, get it just the right size for that sprite. But he shoots little arrows. You can also adjust the speed. Those arrows are kind of slow, so if you click on your projectile here, you can change the speed on the left side properties window. By default, it's 400. I'm going to turn mine up to like 1,000 and see how that looks. That's good. Cool. Now, there's a couple more small things I want to do. For one, if I hold down the spacebar to make him shoot, and then I try to move at the same time, he just slides around. Now, there's a couple things we can do here. One option is that we can make a new animation of our character running and pulling the bow at the same time. That's kind of a lot of work. We'd have to do separate animations for each character, whether they're standing or running. But some game designs like that. You know, if you want to be able to move and shoot at the same time, you might have to do that. We're going to leave that alone for now. We're going to kind of table that idea. And instead, we're going to make it so that when our character is shooting their projectile, they're going to stop moving for a second. And that's a pretty common thing. A lot of games, especially top-down games, when they're shooting, they'll pause their movement for a second. The movement will freeze. And then as soon as the animation's finished, they'll go back to moving. Let me show you how to do that. It's in the event sheet. We're going to add a new event. And this time, we're going to go to main character. And we're going to check to see if the animation, in this case, the shooting animation is playing. So if our main character's shooting animation is playing, we're going to add an action. We're going to go to the system. In this case, the system remembers just a bunch of kind of helpful things. And you'll find right at the top there, set group active. Click on that. Groups are the categories that we made, like character movement, for example. If you start by typing in the quotation marks, you'll see character movement pop up, or whatever you named your group for all of your directional stuff. And then you'll see a state where we can either have it activated or deactivated. What we're saying is basically here that while the action animation is playing, while the shooting animation is playing, we're going to deactivate everything that's in the character movement group. And I'll click OK. So now when I press my space bar, he stops running for a second. I can't move him. Now, unfortunately, I can't move him ever again because all the movement stuff is deactivated, right? I want to make sure that after the animation's finished playing, the character movement group is activated again. So I'm going to add one more condition. I'm going to go to my main character. I'm going to go to on finished, which is checking to see if the animation's finished. I'm going to go to the shooting animation. I'm going to add an action, go back to system, set group. And for this, I'm going to do character movement again, but this time I'm going to go to activated so that when the animation's playing, it's deactivated. When the animation's finished, it's activated. Let's try that. So I'm running, I press the space bar, he stops and shoots, he goes back to running. Now later on, if you want to have in your game the ability to kind of run and shoot simultaneously, we can do that. But for now, I think this is a good solution, and it feels pretty natural. A couple quick kind of just housekeeping things. When we shoot arrows or any kind of projectile in here, they just keep going forever. So even though they leave the screen, the computer is still tracking them way off the side of the screen, which is fine, but it does kind of drain the system. It drains the memory a little bit. And for right now, there's nothing really going on in our game, so you can't tell. But if you shot a bunch of these, it could make the game slow down. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it in the event sheet that when our arrow leaves the screen, it destroys it. It disappears. So I'm going to add an event. I'm going to go to my arrow. And if you scroll down, you'll see an option for is outside layout. And is outside layout means it's past the boundaries of the game. If you click on is outside layout, it checks to see whenever your arrow leaves the game space, we can add an action. We can go to our arrow and we can destroy it. Destroy means just get rid of it, just delete it. And you can't really tell that it's happening, but just know that as your arrow leaves the game, it disappears. Great. Now, let's see, is that it? One last thing that I think maybe could be useful is let's make a group for this stuff too. I'm going to right click and click add group, just like we do with the character movement, but this time I'm going to do character arrow. This is my character shooting his arrow. And just like before, I'm going to click and drag all of my arrow stuff that I just made down under that category. Now to move stuff, remember you have to grab it from the tab that's on the left, drag it down till the black arrow pops up. And now it's all in one group. Now, if you don't want this, if you don't want to have your character shooting stuff out of this animation, like maybe your animation is like something else, maybe they're healing themselves or something, you don't need a laser beam shooting out, you can turn it off. If you right click on any group, I'm right clicking my mouse, you'll see toggle disabled. What that does is it draws lines through everything to let you know that it's not working. It just turns it off. It like makes it so it doesn't actually happen in your game. If you toggle disabled, you can turn things on and off so that they may or may not have any impact on the actual gameplay. So if you have a toggle disabled and you try to use it, nothing's going to happen. If you toggle disabled back on, you can use the movement again. And then the very last thing before I let you guys go, we have one arrow that's sitting here, right? It's just kind of sitting in the layout. And when I start it, you can see it. And that's kind of weird. Why is there an arrow just already flying in the middle of my game? What you have to do is you have to leave this in the game somewhere, but you can drag it outside the boundaries. If I scroll, zoom out, but the way that you zoom out in this is kind of weird. You have to hold down the control key on your keyboard, and then you use the mouse wheel, the scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in and out. If you zoom out, you should be able to see that there's like a boundary and a light gray area outside. Anything that you don't want to have appear in your game at the beginning, just drag it out here. We have to leave it in the layout, otherwise Construct doesn't know how to make it. But if we can drag it out here, then he won't see it when the game starts. Great. So now I can run, I can shoot my arrow. Okay, we'll leave it at that.